Good evening to everyone. I would like to welcome you all. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Shamim, Assistant Professor of English, Kandasamy Kandar College, Paramathivelur, Namakkal, Tamil Nadu. Okay, let's come to the point. Since everyone is here, let's get started the presentation. First, I call upon the first presenter, Dr. Pritam Singh from Rajasthan. His title is based on Feminine Agony in Baby Campbell's autobiography. Am I audible to Dr. Pritam Singh?
Yes,
Sir?
ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
you can
ma'am.
start
Am I
your.
audible, ma'am?
Okay, you are audible.
Okay.
Okay,
Good evening,
sir,
ma'am. Good
you
evening.
carry on. Good evening, good evening.
My topic is writing for her read, Feminine Agony in Baby Kamble's autobiography. As the name of this paper or the book suggests that it is an autobiography, but still, when we go through this book, when we read this book, then we find that there are very few references about the life of the writer herself. She had just presented a very few glimpses of her life. Only during her childhood period, uh, we find a single instance where she had started her soap of her married life with her husband. Otherwise, there is no instances there, no references there about herself. And the reason why she has written this is being told by herself with in her interview with the translator. She says that anyway, for me, the suffering of my community has always been more important than my own individual suffering. I have identified myself completely with my people, and therefore, Gina Amuche, the original name of the book, was the autobiography of my entire community. So, in this book, we find numerous instances where she has presented that how the women of Dalit community, because basically, if you look at the real phenomena of Dalit women in India, then they have a kind of double separation because the one is being of low caste, and the second one is being women because of their gender as well as because of their social status. They face this double separation. So, Baby Kamble, she has presented a very minute details that how the women folk of Dalit community, and one more thing I would like to add here that there was a kind of belief that the Dalit community was more democratic towards their women folk than the Brahmin community because the Hindu law was being so rigorous for women folk. But Baby Kamble here she presents a very real picture of the society, and she just breaks this phenomena that the women folk was considered somewhat democratically. She gives one example that in those days it was the custom to keep women at home behind the threshold. The honor enjoyed by the family was in proportion to the restrictions imposed on the women of the house. When no one could see even a nail of the woman, thus confined within the four walls of the house, then this honor became the talk of the town. Means, the situation of women was very plightful. They were not even allowed to show even a part of their nail. So, and then she goes on to describe a very big account of some incidents which happened in the garb of religious ceremonies, the superstitious accounts she presents, in which she presents the women in the possessed form that they were being possessed by some god or some goddesses, and then they have all those tantrums and all those shocks, and then uh, gradually they were pacified when the head of the family or the elders offer some offerings to them. Though at the linear level, Baby Kamble has presented all these things and she has narrated them in a very brisk manner that as to how the women folk were uh, being used for those superstitious regions. But one line she had written in a very that was the only occasion when the men folk used to worship them, and perhaps the hidden psychological agenda behind that possession theory might be this that women, for once, they enjoy that liberty. Another incident which she talks about is about the marriage, that how most of the girls were married at a very tender age of 10 to 15 years. She herself was married at the age of 13 and she had given birth to 10 children. And, she writes this thing that we, the Mahar women, we used to give birth to children till we can. Means that is a very continuous process. And she very presents a very painful, a very bleak picture of this period when the women give birth to their children. She said that our women offer their entire lives to the service of Mother Earth, but when they themselves become mothers, what do they get? She said that after the baby comes out into the world, a terrible void is left inside. The stomach needs soft and light food, but from where could Mahas get such food? With the hunger gnawing at her insides, the poor woman would just tie up her stomach tightly and lie down on rags, her body a mass of ashes and pain. Means, even during that period, even during their pregnancy, no care is being available to them. No medicines were available to them. And leave these aside, even they were not given proper food. So this picture she presents in a very big manner, very bleak manner. She says that labor pains, mishandling by the midwife, wounds inflicted by onlookers' nails, ever gnawing hunger, infected wounds with pus oozing out, hot water baths, hot coals, profuse sweating, everything, whatever the kind of procedures they adopt during the pregnancy or during the delivery of the baby, they cause the new mother's condition to worsen, and she would end up getting a burning fever. Then she also narrates the situation of married life because the girls were married at a very tender age. So that tender age, they were treated as slaves. As I have said this at the very outset, that they were double oppressed. One, because of their poverty, because of their low status in the society, and then second, because of their gender. She says that the other world had bound us with chains of slavery, means the upper class people has bound our community with slavery, but we too were human beings, and we too desired to dominate, to wield power. But who would let us do that? So we made our own arrangements to find slaves. And who are these slaves? Our very own daughter-in-laws. And she has written two full chapters on this thing, that how those small girls, how they were treated in a very bad manner by their in-laws and even by their parents. And again they were thrashed, again and again they were beaten, again and again they were alleged. And in this manner, the process of infliction of pain goes on upon them. She says that such was the life of our poor hapless daughters-in-law. Lord, the life of the women in the lower caste was thus set by the fire of calamities. This made their bodies strong, but their minds cried out against this oppression. And Baby Kamble, as she was also a disciple and very prominently, she had volunteered in Baba Sahib Ambedkar's movement. So she has also presented that the women were the pathfinders. Women were also taking part in very actively in this emancipation movement. Some examples which she has given, the one which she has narrated is the incident that when someone dies from the upper class, then the shroud of that body, that dead body, is given to the Mahars. And the Mahars, the Mahar girls, how do they flaunt themselves with that shroud? It's quite not worthy. What she narrates is, I quote, that what other evidence does one need to know how the Mahar women crave to live like a Brahmin or a high caste Maratha or Patil women? That lengthy piece which was given to them, they would drape it around herself in various styles and perform a kind of fashion show because she has also narrated this thing that in those days it was prohibited to the Dalit women, the Mahar women, to drape their sari in such a fashion that the borders of the sari should not be visible. Only the upper class women can wear sari in such a fashion so that they can show off their borders and their engravings. So another example which she gives is the incident in which baby Kamble narrates that when they were students and when they were going to the school, then they one day decided to visit the temple as it was prohibited to them. So one day they just enter there and she narrates a very lengthy piece that how they realized and how they had the feeling that the god is of no use to them and why should they visit the temple, why should they go to the Hindu deities anymore. So that is again one more incident she narrates is that because there was Rani Lakshmi Bai who has established the Mahila Mandal under Baba Sahab's effect. So one day when while she was having a meeting, so the arrangements were made in such a manner that all the upper class women were sitting on the chairs and the Mahar women they were supposed to sit on the ground. So one woman from the community, Thakubai Kakade, she just rushed to the Rani and she shook her shoulder and said that your women are not allowing our women to sit on the chairs. Our Ambedkar has told us to demand our rights. I am going to forcefully remove your women from the chairs and seat my women there. So these were the things that how women themselves took the initiative, how they themselves shouldered that emancipation journey, and they achieved that thing. In her interview, also she narrates a very great incident. I must say that in that she said that a son, a mother, she want to send her son to the school, but there was no fee. She asked to her husband, and who outrightly denied it that okay, let him go with me as a wage laborer and we will have some more money to our house, some more earning. But then that lady, she goes to some friend's house, she borrows her necklace, saying that I have to go to some wedding, and she pawns that necklace to a shop. She fills the fee of the school. Then she visits some rich masi of her, and from her she just alludes her or she just convinces her that the gold jewelry which she has with her is not safe with her because she is old and there is always fear of theft. And then she brings that jewelry, gives it to the shopkeeper, and then forfeits that necklace and gives it back. Means such kind of sacrifice which they have made to that emancipation journey to teach their children. And finally, I would like to conclude on this thing that the story of baby Kamble and other Dalit women writers who they they have decisively destroyed the myth which certified that Dalit patriarchy is democratic. She has again and again have written this thing that how my father has denied all the liberty to my mother, though I was fortunate enough. So in this paper, I have tried to present that how that feminine agony of her community was more important to baby Kamble, and even in her autobiography, she has presented the agony of her class, of her creed, not. of herself. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, ma'am.
Aruna, Aruna, are you hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, ma. Okay, ma. I'm audible. Okay, ma. So, okay. You can start your paper. You can start your presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, ma.
Shall I, ma'am?
Okay, ma. You can start. Carry on.
Okay,
Carry
ma'am.
on.
Sure, ma'am.
Okay.
Good evening to you all. I am Vasanta Aruna, research
Mm,
scholar,
mm,
VFSTR deemed to be university. My
mm.
guide is P. Sesiratnakar. So he is associate professor, VFSTR deemed to be university. My topic is suppression and oppression of women in patriarchal society in Anita Nair's novel Ladies Coupe. Actually, my focus is on how women depend on self independent, so self identity, freedom, and here submission of women. These are the main points I have to focus. Coming to my writer's introduction, she is also one of the famous Indian writer in Indian writing in English. She has a deep knowledge about women's side and psychological mind, brings light women's issues through her novels in her characters. But when I go through all these novels, so here one of the finest novel, second novel of Anita Nair is Lady. Here, in this novel, Akila is the protagonist character. She wants to travel in Ladies Coupe. She wants to know the other woman's life experiences. So all these women, they have shared their life experiences with each other. So this is also one of the story, women's search for independence and women search for self identity. So my paper shows so how women characters are lively things. So Maya shows through her light into the novels. Coming to women in every age, not only in one religion, caste, or creed, they are suppressed. So their emotions are not bothered about the others. They are frightened. deprived in the section of the society. That is why various aspects of women discrimination, suppression, not only in the previous centuries, at present also, they are discriminated and suppressed by the patriarchal society. So this patriarchal group is also one of the men-dominated society. So here my focus is on how women struggle for their rights and freedom. So they want to follow the societal norms and they have to establish their own identity. Even though in the 20th century, 21st century, 20th century writers, so they have come out of all these things. Several feminist writers like Kamala Markandeya, Anta Desai, Tara Shagal, Sheshdesh Pandey, Bharati Mukherjee, and so many others. So these women writers show a new dimension of women's search for freedom and self-identity through their work. So women writers show a true picture through their works, and their their works shows female issues like discrimination, biasness, self-identity, struggle for freedom, all these things. Coming to Ladies Coupe, this is a journey of six women characters share their experiences. And here Anita Nair narrating all these tales. So it resembles, Ladies Coupe resembles Charles Canterbury Tales, in which a band of pilgrims on their way to shrine to Saint Thomas a Becket share their tales. Like Anita Nair also share their views through her protagonist character in this novel. So central character Akila, she was 45 years old, brought up from environment. She want to fight for supreme power within the society. So after her father's death, she has to bear the total family responsibility, even though her brothers, sisters are there within the family. But she is a woman. She wants to take up the total responsibility. Everybody, they have to show their selfishness. So here in this novel, I want to give quotation. She was always extension of someone's identity, daughter, sister, aunt. So Akila, the protagonist character, wished for someone should see as a whole being. So various roles played by her. So that means here she sacrificed total life to their family. No one can take, even though sisters and brothers are there, they don't take the responsibilities because of selfishness. After several years, she want to find out for herself. So there is a zero space is there. This is the woman oppression in this patriarchal society. Next, each person life shows very suppression and suffocation. So in this male-dominated society. So in this role, another great prominent character is there, that is Janaki Prabhakar. Actually, she is obedient daughter, faithful wife, and doing mother. But she is always protected by man. She has no individuality. So she has no scope for her identity. So first of all, there was her father, brother, husband. So every stage she protects by man. Nair shows where is her identity. So these are the main points I have to focus on this novel. So this Janaki character in this movie, she married and she is a pampered wife and treating as a fragile creature by her husband Prabhakar. So, 9 years older at her, the time of marriage, she had just 18 and 27 years old. Janaki, beautiful mother, caring, dutiful wife, and caring mother. But whole life suffered. So, this is the point Nair focused here by the male dominance.
husband or her son. One moment at the time in this novel, she says to her husband, "You want to control everybody. You want everyone to do your best." So this is also one of the quotation from this lady. Another character, important character, Sheila, 14 years girl, very sensitive girl, talks about the ill treatment of the female, abused by men. Sheila, very close to her grandmother, Amamma. So practical woman, always teaches her, advises her. So in the old centuries also, women needs their identity. That is why her grandmother teaches here. So everywhere you have to find yourself. Your identity is there. So that is these are the lessons taught to her granddaughter. One day, Sheila goes to her friend's father's house, Hasina's house. So she felt ashamed and hurt by unwanted touching of her father Nazar, Hasina's father Nazar. So that means yes, men everywhere dominated, even though here she is also looked like as a daughter. But he showed there so that unwanted touching as a girl, so ill treated by him. So these are the things that occurred in our society. That is why Antanai shows like all these things. So Sheila went to their house, the sweet building her upper life. So Nazar reached forward and wiped it with her forefinger. So the touch of his finger tingled on her skin for a long time. So that is why Nazar knotted the bows in her sleeves. So all these things she cannot digest by the men-dominated society. She saw the heart of Hasina's mother's eyes, even though Hasina mother knows about all these things, but she can't do it. She can't do it. She can't pretend it. So Sheila never wore the blouse again. So she has self-protected by her own. Next, Hasina's house. Grandmother always teaches her male psychology. She always shows the male psychology is like that. How to protect ourselves. That is taught by her grandmother. This is also one of the good point. How always purify and realize how the another best character is Margaret Chan. So very important character in this one. She wants to do her PhD, but her husband, Ignace Walras, a vice principal of the prestigious institute, but here he always mocked her. You are not at all doing doctorate degree. That is very difficult. So finally, she want to take a grudge. So she always feed her husband with a fatty food. Finally, he can't move within his face. So she has taken a revenge upon him. So he always discouraged. So why she has taken that kind of revenge? So there is automatically when men are oppressed, so the rebellion comes. Even though she is a woman, she has a humanity, but here she has that rebellion character. That rebellion character comes from her identity. So all these things are occur. So Prabha Devi is another important character in among those six women passengers. Very perfect from childhood. Her mother filled pride. Prabha Devi turned 18. She was just like her mother, complete woman. So kind woman had envisioned she would when she was born. She was everything that a girl ought to be. She was married with a diamond merchant. So after 40 years, she realized that she is a good wife, good daughter-in-law, good mother. She forgets about herself. So this is the she identified. So that is why women are balanced between their work, their family life, their professional life, and at the same time balanced for their identity. Next, another character, important character is
இப்போ
marriage
கொஞ்ச
and
நேரம் என்னை விட்டுரு. நான் இன்னும் 5 நிமிஷம் தான் எனக்கு இருக்கு.
she is also one of the good director, Mary Colanzo, 31 years old, born in a poor family, but she is 31-year-old family in little age called Palur near Pachipuram. Panchipuram. She was a widow lady and has a son, helper in a mission hospital. Nair describes here Mary Colanto's character, a deep insight, shows true life in Indian male-dominated society. She is also victim, lost, and her mother illegitimate child. She has experienced poverty, rape, lesbianism, and physical torture. All these things. That is why Anita Nair portrays a real picture of a deprived woman. So all these things are after father's death. Chettiar Kothari, a research family with her mother. So Sujata helped her. That means they are Chettiar's wife. So all these incidents shows us unfortunate things happen in our life. How to protect ourselves. So in one night, ladies who paid. In her interaction, women helped realize Akila. She had given the society superfluous power ruling her life. Women need superfluous power of ruling their life. These women and their stories helped Akila to answer the biggest question. This is the main question throughout this novel. A woman stay single and be happy, or does a woman need a man to feel complete? So, Ladies Coupe has woven five different tales around protagonist character. Asina. So, Indian traditional women's lifestyle full of difficulty. That is why man and woman are equal. They maintain relationship. No one is superior. No one is inferior. Women exploitation occurs at present society also. So many struggles faced by the women: physical, psychological problems, miserable conditions of female in male-dominated society. So, in one of the interview, Nair says, "I am not a feminist. I enjoy being in the house. I like to be treated nicely and pampered. I don't think this book is about feminism. It is about inner strength of women, which I see so many women that overwhelms me." So, here in my conclusion, Nair, Ladies Cooking gives a journey towards self-realization, independence, identity, six women who struggle for their true identity. So this is the novel shows all these women, they have to prove themselves their true identity. That is why Nair in Ladies Who Fail shows the sensibility of a woman, suppression and oppression in patriarchal society. Thank you very much, madam, to give this wonderful opportunity to me.
Divya, Divya, your presentation is on the title Identity Crisis and Analysis of V.S. Naipur's A House for Mr.
Yes,
Biswa.
ma'am. Is it
Okay,
visible?
ma'am.
Is my
Oh,
slide visible?
you are visible.
Okay, okay.
Your
Thank you,
slide
ma'am.
is visible.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
ma'am.
Thank you. The topic of
Okay,
my
ma'am.
presentation is Identity Crisis, an analysis of V.S. Naipaul's A House for Mr. Biswas. So it's a diasporic novel. As a diasporic writer or immigrant writers stand in between two cultural scenarios in the process of moving from one culture to another, and the same dual culture drives a wedge between the nation and the self. The themes of diasporic writings are the concept of rootlessness, dislocation, fragmented thoughts, and memories of homeland and their longing to go back to their motherland. The diasporic writers are trapped in between two cultures, and the readers of both Western and Indian contemplate the West-centric vision and cultural validity of India, respectively, in the present scenario of literary narratives. The complexity in the dislocations of immigrant writers contemplates their memories of their motherland, the breakup of their family relationship, their homelessness, and cultural miss intensified the question of identity in their life, which they continued living in an alien environment. In this particular novel, A House for Mr. Biswas, It reminisces the mysteries of community life of Trinidad. The events and people of his childhood memories in the novel A House for Mr. Biswas coincide after the marriage of Mr. Biswas to the Tulsi family, and that transforms his life into an allegory on bourgeoisie modernity and its values. The protagonist, Mr. Biswas, endeavors to blow out claustrophobic halt of inclinations of the Tulsi family by building his own home, but in vain, since it's scared to him incessantly. The novel reveals the protagonist's struggle to find his own identity. The story looks into the self of the protagonist who wanders in isolation in a quest of genuine selfhood in a dispossessed land. The novel revolves around to certain limitations and struggles to express individuality, but later Mr. Biswas succeeds in getting a house of his own, which is a dramatic achievement in his limited, inadequate life. The story of Mohammed Biswas is symbolic of the cultural milieu of immigrant people of East Indians in Trinidad. In various novels, Nepal particularly argued about the caste system in India, particularly about the Brahmin community, which is dominant. The novel explores the various occasions, such as in the character of Lal, a low-caste Hindu who converted himself to Presbyterianism, and the Hindu social order is also challenged by the intercaste marriage between Mr. Biswa's sister, Dehodi, and Ramchand, who is a low-caste Hindu. It also reveals that the socially sanctioned marriage between Shegar, Mrs. Tulsi's elder son, and Dorothy, who is allied to Presbyterian family, and the illegal and interracial relation between Bandit and a Chinese woman are also against the social order. All these undertakings in the novel signify the breaking of customs and rituals which dominated the East Indian society. Nepal places his comings on the basis of his expatriate sensibility. The caste system of India is being followed in its same intensity at Trinidad, but adaptability had to reconcile himself to the situation. Homelessness and displacement of the protagonist is vividly portrayed in the novel. Hanuman House in the High Street at Awakas served as an alien fortification that embodies the abode of Hindu culture in Trinidad. Hanuman House is a miniature India with Pandit Tulasi and thousands of other Indians who had migrated from India to Trinidad. Nepal presents Mrs. Tulasi as an ardent preserver of Hindu culture, the upholder of traditional daily puja, and the orthodox religious aspects serve as a counter to the bliss of Western culture. I conclude this paper. The experience of this protagonist, Mr. Biswas, it reflects the experiences of minority community in the rapidly changing foreign soil. His dream of a happy life embodies the unfulfilled dreams and desires, and it isolated from him from others. Indian caste-bound system and the identity of minority groups of indentured laborers are emphasized in the novel. Thank you, ma'am.
Divya, thank you. Congratulations for your presentation. You have done well. Is there
Thank you,
any
ma'am.
question? Oh, okay, ma'am. Is there any questions from the audience? Okay, Divya, you can take off. Divya. Okay, let's go to the next participant.
Ma'am, shall I?
Okay, Shangwan, Aisha Shangwan. Aisha Shangwan.
It's a Kajal.
You can start your presentation.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kajal, a MA English student. The title of my research paper is Loneliness and Despair in the Selected Poems of Matthew Arnold. The aim of my research paper is to unfold the elements of loneliness and despair in the selected poems of Matthew Arnold, and the selected poems are: first is Dover Beach, second, the Buried Life, and the Scholar Gypsy. So I'll begin with the abstract. The research paper is an attempt to elaborate the elements of loneliness and despair in the selected poetry of Matthew Arnold. The terms loneliness and despair are crucial in the paper, as loneliness reflects a state of mind in which a person feels left alone, whereas despair is devoid of possibility or hope. The aim of the research paper is to unearth and elaborate on the elements of loneliness and despair in the selected poems of a poet and a critic, Matthew Arnold, particularly in the poems Dover Beach, The Buried Life, and The Scholar Gypsy. Also, to highlight how he portrays the invention of science and technology in the Victorian age as a curse rather than a blessing through his various poems. Also, to highlight upon his quote, I quote, mankind will discover that we have to turn to poetry to interpret life for us, to console us, to sustain us. Now, the introductory part. The research paper is an attempt to explore the elements of despair and loneliness in the poetry of a poet and a critic, Matthew Arnold, and its justification in the poetry itself. As Arnold tried to put forward the picture of Victorian era as Victorians saw their world undergoing into a rapid change, especially Britain transformed from a agricultural society into an urban industrial one. Moreover, the working class, women, and the other people started demanding for right to vote as they became more rational and intellect, as the world was experiencing a great change which also influenced the various poets of his time to write. Matthew Arnold is considered as a great poet of the mid-Victorian era, as he produced a huge collection of poetry and essays. Matthew Arnold was a great poet and a critic born on 24th December 1822. He was a professor of poetry at Oxford in 1857, which one can took as a proof of his expertise in the field of poetry. Arnold, known as the great Victorian poet, along with Alfred, Lord Tennyson, and Robert Browning, as he wrote various poems out of his best poetic capabilities, such as Dover Beach, The Buried Life, The Scholar Gypsy, and The Forsaken Manon. No doubt, Victorian age was the age of materialism, agnosticism, and men did not find comfort and happiness in the arid world. So, Arnold represents his reaction towards the spiritual distress, loneliness, and despair through his poems. Arnold as a proto-modernist. Matthew Arnold considered as a hallmark of the age in one way or another. He was a modern man to a great extent who never witnesses romantics belief but violently point out towards his loss in faith, and so his poetry left crucial legacy to the future generation of poets, as he had the habit of highlighting the melancholy, loneliness, and even hopelessness of his age in his poetry. He is also known as the poet of Victorian unrest, as the Victorian age marked by new scientific thoughts, intellect, and rational thinking, due to which the religious beliefs were disappeared, as Arnold mentioned about the religious disbeliefs of Victorian age in his poetry Dover Beach, as in the Victorian age, the religious belief has came to an end, and the disbeliefs of the world have thrown back the faith from the shared world. And now, according to him, the world is a coast on which pebbles lie. World seems like a barren and a wasteland. The idea, which is much similar to the poem "The Wasteland" by a critic and a poet T.S. Eliot. No doubt, Victorian age was the age of growth and some elements of modernism and of the consolidation of the powers of England, but it was also the time when loneliness and despair were the main themes of the poems, due to the progress marked by in this age. As Matthew Arnold succeeded his enormous master, William Wordsworth, who was of the view that, I quote, the grand universal principle of pleasure in which we live and move and have our being, but in a modified way, as the joy and the tragedy also improves the taste of the readers. Now, the elements of loneliness and despair in the poem Dover Beach. Arnold in the poem Dover Beach used extensively imaginary and symbolism of the ocean waves to represent the destruction of hope and faith in human nature to give way to distress in life. In Arnold's Dover Beach, we can witness the poem as a unique and a nature loving poem, as He mentioned sea is calm, sweet is the night air, which creates the picture of hopefulness and hinted at the world as beautiful. But suddenly, Arnold brings into the idea that it was the last ray of hope and begins with some serious thoughts of sadness as the unpleasant roar of the waves and unpleasant sound made by the sea waves led the poet into a deep grief by which the poet had a reminder of Sophocles, a great poet who saw flow of waves of agency which brought a great misery to human life. Similarly to the idea that once the people's mind in the Victorian age were full of religious beliefs, but now the people were confused between the religious beliefs and the disbeliefs, which brings in the idea of loneliness, melancholy, despair, and dissatisfaction within the womb. As a critique, Arnold brings out the criticism of the contemporary life through his poems. As a critique, J.D. Jump said, as far as it is possible for the single short lyric to do, it represents the main movement of the mind about the last quarter of the century. The scholar Arnold Bloom had fairly lucid Tintin Abbey by William Wordsworth as a great source for the poem Dover Beach, which echoes the stress of the poem Still and Music of Humanity. Elements of loneliness and despair in the poem The Buried Life. This research paper is also incorporates the element of loneliness and despair in one of the poem by Matthew Arnold, that is The Buried Life. In the poem The Buried Life by Matthew Arnold, he expresses his complex feelings of his own personal life and how he entered in his own buried life. Moreover, how he was struggling with his bulk of complex emotions. The poem highlights the feeling of sadness and loneliness in the conversation between the speaker and his lover, that the words of his lover are hard to hear, that they made the poet's eyes wet as some disturbing element present between the two of them, which creates a great restlessness in the whole poem as the poem expresses the melancholy of their inner life. As Arnold's poetic power was so immense that his purpose was both extended and beneath, as Arnold's poetry is ambassador of the Victorian mess of faith, so Arnold serves himself as a teacher, a moralist, and a physician of his age. The poem The Buried Life healed the feeling and imperialistic crust of the poem's dialectic quest for self love. The poem's focal point is on the way that we don't grant ourselves to be original, the profess journally to be someone else as the people feel more convenient in that way. Also people tend to be distorted by the exterior world too much, that they keep themselves away from being our real selves, and this feeling goes on until and unless people found that someone special whom they love and who allow them to be their real selves. The association that a relationship make prevail through us, so that in lieu of diversely feelings dead inside and we feel alive in every aspect of the world. Elements of loneliness and despair in the poem The Scholar Gypsy. Poem The Scholar Gypsy, considered as one of the most popular poem by Matthew Arnold. The story of the poem is based upon a fable character Joseph Galvin's book named The Vanity of Dogmatism. The poem has a pastoral setting and talks about a scholar in 17th century Oxford. It also unfolds the story of a poor yet intelligent boy who once a part of Oxford but now left it to join the group of gypsies. Gypsies are a group of people who are far away from the modern world and on a journey of self discovery by their own experience in life, which Oxford never gave him. In the poem The Scholar Gypsy, Arnold again deals with his signature theme and he criticized the modern life in which the world was entering, so as the narrator experienced both the lives that one is of Oxford towns and other is of gypsies. So as a whole, Arnold represents his internal conflict of measure up a new life which according to him is uninspired and hinted at spiritual distress. It was, according to him, was criticism of life, as he was of the view that a poem should reflect the realities of life. The main idea is that the one who lives a modern life is more prone to depression, shocks, and distress, which is very much relevant even today. Now, I would like to conclude. No doubt, Matthew Arnold uses various types of imaginary, metaphor, and symbolism to highlight the theme of loneliness and despair in his poems Dover Beach, The Buried Life, and The Scholar Gypsy. In the poem Dover Beach, he comments on the outlook of human beings towards life, and as one in the Romantic age, the people were filled with religious faith and beliefs, but as resulted by progress, they lost their faith and moved towards complete barrenness in life, which he beautifully represents by using the various imaginary of sea, land, and a dark place where people are fighting for no reason, and where people forget their purpose and aim of life. And at the end of the poem, Arnold has left their readers in a complete hopeless situation which he and his generation was facing. And if we talk about his other poem, The Buried Life, where Arnold deals with the sadness and the conflict from within or the inner self of a person, and highlight the restlessness of a person at the same time, as the name suggests, the buried life. So Arnold focuses on the buried concept of life, and where he adopts the conflict of consciousness and got influenced by his feeling to write such piece of writing. As a whole, in his poem, Arnold criticized the modern life in which the world was undergoing and tries to open up the path for self learning, as the poem The Buried Life, written just after Dover Beach, so one can easily draw a beautiful contrast between both the poems, which greatly deal with the melancholic viewpoint of Arnold towards life, or he tries to put forward the picture of mid-Victorian era for his readers, and also left a great impact on the future generation of writers and poets, as well as on the English literature. The sole thing that makes the Scholar Gypsy so powerful is that the narrator isn't the only one who wants to escape from the modern life. Many others desire to do the same. Most crucially, he is willing the utter dispute a shared society in the sake of transcend, eager to enjoy true uniqueness while remaining a member of society, despite the fact that such thought has a gloomy underpinning. Thank you.
Kajal, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was very nice. You have chosen a few poems from Matthew Arnold. You have dealt about loneliness and despair elaborately. Thank you. It was so nice. Is there any questions from the audience? Okay, if not, let's go to the next participant. Thank you, Kajal. You can take off.
Thank you,
Good,
ma'am.
Who is the okay,
good
ma?
evening,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Who is the next one?
Ma'am, this is
Priyanka.
Priyanka.
Welcome,
Yes, ma'am.
Priyanka. Welcome, Priyanka. Congratulations for your presentation. You can
Thank you, ma'am.
start your
Yes, ma'am.
paper.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
I'm Priyanka Bala, research scholar from St. John's College, affiliated with MS University. And I'm doing my research under the supervision of Dr. M. Srividya Elias Thangalakshmi, Assistant Professor, Department of English, St. John's College. The title of my paper presentation is Challenges in Enhancing Speaking Skills Through Online Classes Among the Students in Undergraduate Level During the Pandemic Period COVID-19. The pandemic period of COVID-19 had been a challenge to the learners as well as the teachers for the past 2 years. This paper analyzes the practical issues on the part of the students and the teachers in arts and science colleges experienced during the virtual mode of learning. This paper analyzes the facilities and the difficulties to focus on the needs of the second language learners to develop an expected level of speaking skills during these hard days.
It also focuses on the role of language teachers in general English classes, teaching the students pursuing undergraduate courses in arts and science colleges. It throws light on the tough role played by the teachers in teaching English through online mode to the non-major students. On the other hand, this paper also deals with stress um, that has been faced and the practical difficulties while listening to the teacher virtually. Learning is a process that continues throughout our lifetime and it reflects in almost everything we do. The invention of computers and the internet paved way for the new method of learning using digital tools. In modern society, there are many modes of learning, such as traditional forms and new forms, namely e learning and virtual learning. E learning doesn't really seem to replace the age old classroom model, but stands as a promising solution where it reaches the far flung areas during the pandemic lockdown period of connecting the students without any break. Ever since the internet's invention and its introduction in the academic world, new technology started intruding into the educational systems across the world. But due to the connectivity between the teachers and the students, every growing new technology has not completely changed the entire educational system. A lot of structural and administrative changes in the education system happened across the world. With the growth of online platforms, learning becomes very easy as it plays the role of intermediary between the students and the teachers. The invention of mobile virtual learning environments stepped to the next level because of its handy and simple gadgets to handle. Especially smartphones become the primary mode for the students to learn after the COVID-19 pandemic hit nations across the world. Now, the pandemic has brought a huge disruption, and new educational policies also aims at digitalizing the education in the country to make it interactive for the students. Ever since the lockdown imposed the government too started many initiatives to provide many online portals to facilitate, like NPTL, etc. Successive lockdowns left us with only one option, that is online courses. Though online classes offered time saving technology, it also hampered social skills. But it has quelled the doubts of many parents, teachers, and students about e learning and threw a new light on the education system. In these circumstances, pre pandemic learning and post pandemic learning have eliminated academic achievements, as there is no source for evaluating assess students' performance as well. The steady decline in English reading habits is visible after the pandemic hit the world, but English language will continue to dominate the world with various degrees of standardization happening. Now, the question that evokes to analyze the pros and cons of learning online is whether the virtual teaching conditions invariably led to the obvious and hopeless results during these pandemic days. But it has been challenging for the teachers to help the second language learners to improve with their speaking skills. And it has been evident that there are marked differences between the English medium students and the vernacular medium students. And the proven result is that they cannot acquire English as a second language under the same circumstances. Now, as a result, the vernacular medium students showed substandard linguistic abilities due to the optimal situation in which they were able to find themselves in developing those speaking skills. The second language is the major concern in the world as educators. Now, the potential here is enormous, as all schools and colleges, including technical institutions, focus on the proficiency of the English language. Now, the 2020 year remarkably gave a new experience to both the students and the teachers. Both the students and the teachers had to rapidly adapt to the new technologies. Now, despite the unpleasant outcomes of the pandemic, this period was noted as an encouraging time for virtual learning. Now, teachers adapted to the resilient educational system, and students were psychologically prepared to accept the virtual learning. The first challenge is to change the traditional method of teaching in person to virtual teaching methodology. Now, it demanded the teachers to be more creative and to adopt many innovative techniques to keep the students engaged in a stipulated time of study. And teachers had to rely upon various virtual platforms such as Google Classroom, Zoom Meet, Teams, etc., to impart their modules to the learners. Every home became a center of learning as all the students had to undergo their studies. Now, the role of social media in teaching English, the students were allowed to access the teachers through social media like WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram, and they've uh, and completed their academic assignments on time. So these social media platforms enhanced the teacher-student relationship and thereby improved their writing skills. Now, devoid of speaking practice inside the formal classrooms, teachers found it very hard to extract words from the students. Now, a comprehensive strategy was adopted to maintain the socio-economical balance for the teachers who were never expecting this kind of role to depend on electronic device to teach their students. Now, the adaptability struggle was the first and foremost of all the threats that prevailed among the online learners, and computer literacy and time management were the practical hindrances. Excess exposure to screen time affected their health condition, and they were also forced to follow the policy of isolation during online learning, and hence the psychological self alienation of the students. Most of the learners suffered from this self isolation and compelled solitariness. Now, lack of motivation was again the biggest challenge during the pandemic era for the online learners. Now, talking of the technical constraints, students suffered a lot due to the technical issues, and it created a sense of isolation during the time of listening. Now, they need to be self disciplined and self motivated to attend the classes both mentally and both physically and mentally. They became tired due to excess screen time. 33% of the students opined that the online teaching was easy to follow, while 20% of the students found very difficult to follow the language of the teacher. 40% of the students were of the view that they could follow their language teacher with the help of the present notes on the topic discussed, while 7% of the students did not show any interest to attend the classes because of the non-availability of the devices and the internet connection. Now, the poor academic environment made them fleeing from the screen, and this 7% of students are suffering from the gap or the vacuum that occurred during the online classes till date. Now, to conclude, it is proven that online teaching was definitely a challenge to the language teachers to overcome the technical issues during COVID-19 of teaching. They were forced to stay connected with their students to avoid distraction, deviation, and demotivation among the learners. On the other side, the students suffered due to the lack of speaking practices in the formal classrooms and fear of interaction with the teachers and the peers. Lack of technical knowledge on the side of the learners causes social isolation, and the results in the second language learners were not empowering the utmost necessity receptive communication, which is a speaking skill ability. They struggle to give verbal and non-verbal feedback demanded by the instructors. The real sufferers were the student community who lacked help from their teachers. On the other hand, the teachers were also suffering due to the compulsion of the changing teaching methodologies to adjust the instructional process during the pandemic days in order to meet the needs of the curriculum and the syllabus. Thank you, ma'am. Thereby, I conclude and end with my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Priyanka,
Yes, ma'am.
Priyanka, congratulations
Thank
for
you,
your
ma'am. Thank
future. Okay, ma'am. Best wishes for your future. You have
thank
done well. You have chosen the sufferings of the students at the
you.
period of at the pandemic period of COVID-19.
Yes.
You have dealt elaborately how the students have suffered from the online mode, what they have lost while learning English. Thank you, thank you,
Thank you, ma'am.
thank you
Thank you.
so much. Okay, is there any questions from the audience? No, I think. Okay, ma'am. Thank you. You take off,
Thank
ma'am.
you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, let's go to the next participant, Sonal
Yes,
Shaini. Okay, are you ready to present your
yes,
paper?
yes.
Okay, best wishes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am, you start.
Good evening to everyone. I am Sonal Saini, a research scholar from North Cap University, Gurugram, Haryana. So my topic is Identity, Reality and Self in Rita Golden Gelman's The Tale of a Female Nomad. Women writers have tried to construct a career and a public identity for themselves while advancing an alternative history of women in the 20th and early 21st century. They follow their predecessors defensively and offensively, negotiating ideological constructions of womanhood, including injunctions to chastity, modesty, and silent disdain for the literary production and commercial success of their writing in influencing other women to see life in a different way. Rita Jalman, travel writer, has dared to take up the challenges of life by creating her own dream path. Rita interrogates the connections between individual and her association with human approach to social identities, language, tradition, and culture. Travel writing is significant and impressionistic also because it is for true first person account of an author's journey, namely autobiographical in nature, and follows a structured pattern which is linear and chronological and depicts the travel to the reader. So, till the early 19th century, travel narratives were focused only on factual accounts of men writers, as women did not accompany them on the journeys. So, their lot was just to wait for the heroes to return to their fold, depicting masculine valor, scientific exploration, and colonized status of the places visited. Visited. It only came after the 19th century that it took the form of a memoir. It was from 1970s the female experience began to take on positive affirmations. The female aesthetic arose, expressing a unique female consciousness and a feminine tradition in literature, as it celebrated an intuitive female approach in the interpretation of women's text. It spoke of a vanished nation, a lost motherland, of a female vernacular of or mother tongue, and of a powerful but neglected women's culture. Writers like Virginia Woolf and Dorothy Richardson, emerging out of the Victorian period and then influenced by its writing, were perhaps the first women to recognize this. In Professions for Women, Woolf discusses how a woman writer seeks within herself the pools, the depths, the dark places where the largest fish slumber, inevitably colliding against her own sexuality to confront something about the body, about the passion. So, in the book, Rita Golden Gentleman narrates her travel around the world in her work, Tale of Female Nomad Living at the Large in the World. She decided to live her dreams when her marriage failed. She only dreamt of traveling exotic places and experiencing other culture. She started her travel at the age of 48 years, and for 15 years her journey continued. She learned to survive and thrive in her life. Through uh, her travel has a continuous link in her life, yet her bond towards her family was immense. She has passed 38 years. At that point, she seriously feels that she was looking for a way to reinvent her life. This book has given courage to do new things in life that women hesitated to do so. She, being an ordinary woman, has created a spectacular life filled with adventures. Rita's sincere connectivity of people, her ability to handle situations, and her trust towards people is admiring. Her writing is an account of happenings, not a story. Rita did what many women dream of doing. She just did not dream but made it. Her writings have been able to build a new life she envisaged and to wonder how wonderful and exciting a life can be. For women, travel also means escaping the constraints of the society and family expectations and obscure norms. The contemporary woman writer has chosen this, and the study has revealed that it is one of the most dominant theme: the construction of self through self-imposed exile to satisfy their quest and conquest instincts. Travel gives the women the fluid space to shun family pressures to conform to the conventional norms, thus, by giving them the freedom of mind and spirit and the space to evolve. Rita, the middle aged woman who was on the verge of the divorce, has overcome, was basically at that point of time, she was trying to overcome her loss, to trying to get back her life, trying to relive her dreams, which she has buried long back, and with the help of self adapting to changing the environments, habitat, culture, and in the process of self actualizations. Rita Golden, she was a living, a she had a very beautiful life in at the beginning of her book in 1985. Her life is filled with parties and celebrities, but she isn't happy. She quotes in her book, I am living someone's life. It's a good life filled with elegant restaurants, interesting peoples, and events like Academy Awards and the Grammys. My husband of 24 years and I dine with celebrities. We see the latest movies before the rest of the world, and we are invited to the book parties in Los Angeles. After talking to a woman on flight, Rita realizes that she wants something else, and what all she's surrounded by is not her real identity. The female tells her about the business of booking sailing tours, and this kindles the dormant fire of Rita to travel. And then in the next time she quotes, as the woman spoke, I remember that once I dream of sailing around the world, of paddling down the Amazon, of sitting around the fire with tribal people and sharing their lives. I loved the person who had those dreams. She was daring and idealistic and gone. My husband had no interest in boats and the tribal culture. She says Rita decides to go on a sail on the Tigris in the Galapagos Island without her husband and spectate to volcanic islands, interacts with sea lions, blue-footed boobies, work with the tropical waters, and touch the magic of the otherness. And this one step before her divorce towards the new adventurous life make her eschew the glamorous life she was living, realizing the futility of her life. Her thirst for discovery, for learning, for penetrating the unknown from now onwards becomes a drive in life. By living a married life, she knew that she can't continue the adventurous life of traveling. She realizes that her successful career as a writer of children books, her enrolling herself in the UCLA University, studying anthropology, doesn't fulfill her desire for adventure and real travel. She and her husband were two different individuals for a various interests and attitudes in life. She plans to take a short break for 2 months from her married life, knowing at the same time that there would be no return. On the road, she decides to set herself free from the regime roles. Her destination in Mexico City, she does a lot of introspection about her staying alone in a hotel where she says, who is this person in this strange hotel? Alone for the first time in her life. Why am I here? What have I done? I feel as though I am in a play, following a script that was written by a stranger. Part of me scared, but there is another part deep inside that is excited at the idea that I am about to enter the unknown. She realizes for the first time that the quest for the known has been there in her as a child. She mentions, as a child, I loved the unknown. Her quest for knowing the unknown makes her participates in different cultures by being emotionally involved in people's life. I'm running towards adventure, towards discovery, towards diversity. I can do whatever I want to do. And what I want to do is move through other worlds, learn what it is that makes us all human, and interact with people who are different from me. The encounter with the unknown, which to some extent is mystical, makes her philosophical in examining what she says, and solitude further paves the way for her to experience the spiritual. There's a part in the poem saying where her skin starts peeling away lying in the bed one night. She was basically not doing well at that point of time. She was having typhoid. So in at that point of time, she says when her skin starts peeling away lying in the bed one night, she thinks about rebirth, where she's saying, then as lie in bed one night burning up and in pain, I get the first spiritual message of my life. In shedding my skin, I am reborn. I am symbolically peeling away the person I have become and realizing the woman who has been trapped inside all these years. Soon, this new me will be going out into the world on a journey of self discovery. She heals, just not on the outer bodily level, but internally too. Everything changes in her. Perhaps she has had the time and reflection to understand morality and fleeting character of her life for the first time. Thus, after moving for 15 long years, Rita has learned to enjoy and savor the present. She says, when I'm writing, I'm inside the sound and meaning of the words, playing with them, curving them around each other. When I'm eating, I luxuriate in the taste and texture of every bite. When I'm alone, I listen to and communicate with the silence within me and noises and messages of the world around me. Rita feels satisfied with her life that she has completed 62 years and yet she is very enthusiastic to know more about the world and learn new languages. She learns Thai food in Thailand and learns Thai language to communicate to people. Even after spending 14 years of nomadic life, she still loved to be amidst the people. From Thailand, she continued her journey to New Zealand. Rita is she doesn't think about the future, she just goes by the thing. She concentrates on meaning and the sound of words. She plays with the words. She listens to communicate with the silence within her voice and the messages of the world. Though she has moved around, still she carries the people and their existence with her. We are human beings to share all common emotions, hence communication was very easy for her and universal capacity to help each other and laugh together as she brought the whole world under her purview. She put in all her ideas and experience in her book, The Tale of the Female Nomad, to re-reach the world again with her personal adventure and passion to live for the people to know own self. Her liberated life, independent life, has linked her to the whole world, where many have contributed to know herself as a human who lacks identity. She has taken her liberty even in writing in chronological order in narrative and personal descriptive aspect of life. Rita has found her identity herself by being a best human in the world motivation those women who are outcasted in society. The liberation of women is considered as one of the significant issues of discussion in the world, yearning for social, economic, and political rights of the women. In fact, few decades, the liberation of women had a developing trend in women expressing in writing. Writers struggle and search for their identity amidst the tribes. This paper mainly focuses on the emotional world of women, their sensibility as well as psychology. In medieval period, women life was completely dominated and oppressed, but now women have started raising their voice in identifying themselves. Thank you.